Hello, folks. It's another episode of the CyberDudes podcast. It's episode 8. We're on the first episode of our new attempt to be regular with our recordings and releases. Fortnightly schedule every 2 weeks. For those not familiar with it, yeah, it's my mother vernacular, isn't it? My name is Robin Thornton, as always, and Omar's with me yet again. He always is. You're always going to be here, ain't you?
Can't shuck me, man. I'm a stalker. Exactly. We're good. Good buds. I'm excited. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Well, look, it's not you are one half of this. It doesn't work if you're not here.
I thought you'd let that one float by, but yes, indeed. But still, very glad we're here together, I should say.
Yes. I have been thinking if we decide to do a weekly news roundup. So every week, yeah, I've been thinking about this. So because obviously we do the news every episode that we do, but that leaves in between. I mean, if we have a several month lag in between, there's a whole load of news that we're not actually doing. But even doing every 2 weeks, there's too much really for us to do the full gamut in just the 15-20 minutes at the beginning of an episode. So just a very quick 10-minute jobby every other week in between episode weeks, and I think that might work. We'll see whether that gets some appreciation.
I like it.
Not least as well, what we've started doing on the editing is, you'll see this on YouTube. It's not yet on Spotify. Interesting development. This is always now on Spotify. Right. So we've got episodes 2.
It'll be nice to look back. It'll be nice to look back and be like, look how professional we are. Right. Exactly.
That's true. Well, there's a guy whose podcast I follow called Chris Williamson. He was actually on, I think, one of the earlier seasons of Love Island. And his thing is that he's got super produced stuff now. But you look back 3 years and he was in a room with just a relatively crappy camera setup and a guest across the table from him, and he's they're talking away and he's doing every couple of seconds, and it gets quite distracting. He will criticize his own stuff in terms of that, saying the delivery of it was just kind of garbage, didn't really know what I was doing. And I mean, every episode that we do, I look at that sort of stuff. I look at where all my filler words are, and what one guy, David JP Phillips, that Swedish guy who does all the presentation stuff, what he calls sheep noises, like all that sort of stuff. Because I see that on editing and I have to cut it out.
Hey, you had me at Love Island. I just want to say, I want to back up real quick. I was locked in and intrigued. Okay, that's a new level of friendship unlocked. We have to talk about that offline. Like, I gotta.
What? Do I watch it, or what is Love Island?
Yeah,
I assume you know what Love Island is.
I think it's it sounds like a reality show. I think I've seen it on Netflix, right? Yeah. And I'd skip it. But are you an enthusiast? Is this where, I don't want it to take up too much time, but like you can educate me later.
I watch it begrudgingly because my wife enjoys it as fairly mindless.
That's television. The 90 Day Fiance for me. I got sucked in, but now I'm also a fan. Yeah, and I just can't look away.
Yeah. Where was it? I was at the dentist a week or so ago, and it was on so you have a TV above you, so you can be distracted whilst they're drilling away at your mandibles. And the sound wasn't on. She was like, "Oh, do you want the sound?" I was like, "No, it's 90 Day Fiance. Like, it's torture enough with just the visuals of it. Plus, it's kind of funny because then it kind of means, because it's one that I'd already seen in passing before, so I can just be like, I remember these cretins."
Yeah, pretty much. It's make you feel better about yourself, right? Like, at least I'm not that bad.
Oh, it really does. And then I sometimes think it's kind of a nice one every now and then when you see a couple that's not a complete train wreck. It's like, actually, they've gone and, for once they've gone and picked some sensible people.
Yeah, and then you don't see them often, right? Because they don't make good TV. So you see them for a little bit, they turn out to be okay, and then you never see them again, right? It's only
I think they make really good TV just by way of of I wouldn't say really good TV, that's too much. But I think they make better TV by way of, comparison and leveling out, giving you
Sure.
some perspective as to how train wrecky some of these other people really are.
Fair.
Anyway, we'll move on. We burned 6 minutes on Love Island and 90 Day Fiance, or a good portion of 6 minutes on Love Island and 90 Day Fiance. We'll get into the cyber things because that's what you're all really here for. First things first, what's nothing necessarily that we've got lined up in the news, but anything struck you this week or this last week or two from a cyber perspective, Omar?
I really just kind of taken a peek at the fallout from the CrowdStrike stuff. We'll get into it in the news, but
Yeah.
I know you said not in the news, but it's really the only thing I've been really privy to or paying attention to. You can't escape it. All over my feeds, and as well as just straight up news wise. A lot of numbers getting thrown around and a lot of repercussions, and I don't feel that that's going to taper off. So we'll dig into that, but that's all I've been keeping an eye
No,
on.
it's not. Fair enough. I've seen a few things on the threads. I think the Instagram copyright emails, like fraudulent copyright email
Oh
things that seem
yeah.
to they look like they're coming from Instagram, but they're not. They're making a
Mm-hmm.
resurgence. I've also seen some fake PayPal stuff going around. Well,
Yeah.
what phishing guys at Proofpoint call toad scams, so telephone oriented attack delivery, which fundamentally means it's a phishing email that doesn't actually come from a nasty email address or domain. It doesn't actually contain any nasty links or anything like that. It's just got a phone number for you to call under the pretext of there's been some charge made and you're going to be responsible for it. Please call us up to fix it, and then they just use it as an opportunity to take your personal details. So those have been doing the rounds. Again, I think those are quite prevalent because they do use the likes of Square and PayPal's actual systems to send them, so they get around phishing safeguards and phishing filters. So that's
Bastards.
particularly underhanded and shitty. I don't really like that, but it's the world we live in. No, that's all that was really hit me. But let's dive into the news. So our first one today, we've got Putin's trader, how Russian hackers stole millions from US investors. So this goes to, you may well have heard this week, so since, I think it was Monday, there's been a big prisoner exchange between the US and Russia, along with, who else was involved in this? Wasn't there Germany and someone
It's
like
like a 7-nation.
Slovenia was involved in it?
Yeah. It was like a big
So,
trade for soccer players, right? Or like NBA stars. It was like 7 teams. There was cash
yeah.
considerations to be named later, right?
Yeah, well, this is what I mean. There's part of what irritates me about this is that it's the nature of having slightly more sound morals than the other side. Is that we have to trade cyber criminals who there's documented evidence that they have committed illegal acts, and we have to trade them for people who have been thrown in the slammer on trumped up charges that don't really hold any weight. I mean, it's a completely asymmetrical sort of scenario.
Can't say trumped up charges anymore, man. Like I think I don't know if we want to dip into the politics there if we want to get sounded out, but
That's the
any
irony. His charges aren't really
yeah,
trumped up.
that's listen. How do you say something so controversial yet so true? But I just want to say categorically, I want it to be at the top of this story. Anything that got Evan Gershkovich back in the United States was going to be up to and including, sadly, as you say, trading actual assassins, cyber criminals, and other assorted pieces of human garbage that we have to trade and set free in order to get people like that American journalist, like I said, Evan back. Thank goodness. The gangster move he did on the way out, he had to write a letter to Putin, I think was the requirement before he left. Very weird and authoritarian, but at the end of the letter, he tacked on and said, "Hey, homie, let's do an interview." Right? And I thought the brass set of amazingness that it takes to say that to your jailer on the way out, because
Yeah, it's the
and it's just
balls to go back
dedication
in
to the
front of him.
craft. Yeah, honestly, and I could just like I'd probably vote for him for public office. Like if he did that, pulled it off, and still managed to ask him harder questions than Tucker Carlson did, which I mean, it's a very low bar.
Yeah, I was gonna say low
Then
bar.
who's gonna asking him his real like documented name would be going at him harder than Tucker did. Good Lord. The glaze job that was. But, and, Evan, I know we had a couple other people on there, U.S. Marine. Again, as you said, just trumped up terrible nonsense. But this guy in particular, holy moly, this sounds like the intro to it sounds like the premise for a spy movie, right? Or like a genre mashup between Margin Call and Bourne, I guess. But it's what I think it's a watershed moment for is exposing the fact that there's layers to these attacks now. We've known this for a little bit, but I wanted to really drive that point home where it's not just straight up, I'm going in, I'm going to hack you. No, there's the front end of, hey, it's really an investment concern. You go through all the trouble of making it a somewhat legitimate investment arm. There was enough substance there to not be all sizzle, no steak, just enough then to steal intellectual property as a result of your research of these firms for your investment concern. So massive, and just the money involved and at the echelons of society that this guy was operating at.
Yeah.
Honestly, this sounds like an episode of Billions. I missed that show. It was one of my guilty pleasures, but this is what this sounds like. This is madness.
Several of these Russian hackers, they have operated under the guise of being financial traders, exploited cybersecurity weaknesses, and to infiltrate some financial systems and divert funds. They targeted several investment platforms using some pretty advanced methods to avoid detection of what they were really doing and obfuscate their true motives.
Some would even say
spear phishing.
Some would even say state level sophistication.
State level sophistication, yes. Well, it includes spear phishing, exploitation of 0-day vulnerabilities, which, for those who are not in the know, bugs that are not yet known about, so you can't protect against them.
Yep. Cyber
and
nukes.
What's inside? Sorry.
Cyber nukes,
yes.
essentially. Yeah.
Yeah. Once inside, they've been able to monitor transactions, divert funds with what's said here is remarkable precision, leveraging deep understanding of financial ops, and investors have been left grappling with the aftermath of this. There's financial losses and compromised personal information have really compounded the damage here. So, yeah, not good. And we've had to trade these guys back to get some innocent people back.
Yeah.
And it feels kind of like I think there's probably a bit of a damned if you do, damned if you don't for the current administration here, because Republicans were absolutely clamoring, why have we not yet got these people back from the Russians, which is hysterical because there's certain individuals within that side of the house who are kind of cozy, allegedly, with the Russian state.
Just look at who congratulated whom for the trade. That's the headline I want to say. No, and I'm not saying that it was one. Yeah, and it was. I'm not saying it was one specific person in the current administration. This is obviously a team effort. Shout out to maybe Blinken. Right, he's out there trying to do his Secretary of State stuff, trying to maneuver this way. But good Lord, right? Can we not congratulate the person that was illegally detaining Americans? Evan and everyone else involved in the trade were locked up for a long time, far longer. 2 days is too long in those sorts of conditions. I kept hearing about, it's extended. I kept hearing about the sham trial that he was on. Right? I mean, this was front and center for me because I have a couple of Wall Street Journal folks on my feeds, obviously, and just anybody in that field was trying to show solidarity. This is egregious, but again, now you're going to get on the deal for, look who we traded. I mean, at least we got him back, right? At least we got him and a bunch of other folks back, for goodness sakes. I don't know. You're right. That's a good point.
You mentioned Anthony Blinken there. Total tangent. So obviously Anthony Blinken goes down as if you're using first initial and surname, it goes down as A. Blinken. He is a bit of a what's Ron Swanson's alter ego on the sax at jazz circuit?
Duke Silver.
Duke Silver, yes. So Anthony Blinken is a bit of a Duke Silver kind of character within the DC jazz circuit, and he goes under the pseudonym of Abe Lincoln, which is just Brilliant.
Listen, that I think all
That
our,
is
our,
that
our
is a
listeners just got paid out here. If you listen for nothing else, it's for those type of tidbits.
that
What
is what is he,
I'm looking.
Secretary of State or something?
I think he is right.
That is a Secretary of State with
He's our head
a
diplomat. Yeah,
sense of humor and some style.
yeah, and a good head of hair on him too. I always admire that, like that
Yeah,
looking.
yeah,
He got
a
zaddy
good lid.
vibes. I tell
Yeah.
you, he got zaddy vibes. You know, now all I'm thinking about is Duke Silver and all the phrases, right? Like, I'm just thinking, now this guy, I hate you. This is great. Yeah,
Okay. All right. Moving on. Next story. This is something I brought up. I mean, we go from one bit of humor to another. This is one thing I brought up purely for the humor of it. So, CISA Chief AI Officer Lisa Einstein talks AI and cybersecurity. I'm not going to go into anything about what has been talked about here outside of simply, it's a matter of large amounts of information that are being ingested by models, and there's a huge potential for leaks here. What I love most about this is Lisa Einstein, number of times in meetings that it must be, so what do we do about this, Einstein? And it must just sound really sarcastic.
but it won't be. At least it
But,
won't be up front. I will try to round out with a little bit of like newsworthiness here.
okay, go for it. Yeah,
It's CISA appointed an AI chief. That should
that is
tell
good.
the world,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mm,
and the industry, multiple industries, how seriously this needs to be
yeah.
taken. So that was, when I saw that, I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and this is the problem with the AI pieces. It's bifurcation. It's sort of chaos theory type stuff where things just proliferate out of control much faster than
Sure.
you ever considered that they might, based on small changes at the beginning. Big story from the week, purely from the IT perspective. Microsoft Azure suffers the largest ever DDoS attack, and they made it worse for themselves. Do you want to give us a rundown? Because I know you were very into this. Do you want to give us a rundown on what happened here?
I struggle with this one only because it's like kick me, right? Like while they're down this week. And the polls that I've been seeing and as a result of this, and rightfully so. And this is where, this issue has been, I think, rife within cloud for ages. Misconfigurations. Right. And I think
Yeah,
misconfigurations at the user level, the shared responsibility model is such that all the cloud providers are very stark in their we run this, you run that. So that with the users always, I want to say like 80% of the issues that you'll find misconfigurations. You didn't set up something the right way. It was a little dense to figure out. I would contend that it's made obtuse on purpose because it's in order to it's very bespoke. It's very you can do a lot of great things with it, but I think it's kept murky in order to generate some cash. That's the tinfoil hat person in me. Now, bringing that back up to this story in particular, misconfigurations and boo-boos essentially can happen even by the folks that implement these tools. So what's left for the rest of us, right? That's where I just want to say, the grander takeaway for me, don't sleep on cloud. It's crazy to say this at 2, 3, 10 years into rolling it out. A bunch of mature enterprises are trying to continuously move to cloud every day. Cloud has been around so long that like total cost of ownership arguments are now going, should we come away from cloud, right? It's gone back and
yeah,
forth here. But if Microsoft can stumble implementation and configuration wise and just shoot itself in the feet to exacerbate an issue, hey, you can't do this fly by night. It's not the same as on-prem. It's similar enough to make you think it is, but good
yeah,
God, are misconfigurations the devil in the details here for cloud in particular. That's
yeah.
my takeaway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I should give a little correction here. The headline there is this error in Microsoft DDoS defenses amplified a error Azure outage. That's what it comes from, the register. And yeah, it was simple misconfiguration. The actual specific quote here comes from Microsoft themselves. Initial investigations suggest that an error in the implementation of our defenses amplified the impact of the attack rather than mitigating it. Oy, oy, oy.
That's. I
Not
mean,
good.
you're playing with fire. Essentially, is
Yep.
my takeaway here. You know,
Yeah.
I get you want to be first. I get you're locked in a death battle with AWS to try to
Yeah.
scoop up market share. I understand all of that, and I'm a fan that there's an alternative to AWS. I'm excited there, because if there wasn't, good grief, would some of the weird stuff that Amazon does be even worse, right? Like shutting down
Yeah.
stuff, changing certifications. It pisses me off, you know that. Or, you know, really more so, honestly, from the implementation side, winding
Yeah.
down services without telling people or giving people time to switch or whatnot. Oh, it's not making us enough money. Bye.
Yeah.
If there was no
Well,
alternative, it'd be worse.
there's a lot of the mantra of, and this goes for the likes of Spotify and Netflix and Disney Plus, etc. These days, even in the gaming sphere as well, when you're downloading games digitally now,
Yep.
because they're
Yep.
linked into the service from where the stuff came, it's the mantra of you'll own nothing and you'll like it. And I really, really dislike
Yeah.
it. It annoys me straight up that
Mm-hmm.
I was going into work a couple of weeks ago after my father-in-law removed the hotspot capability from our phone plans, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to access files on my work laptop that I think are there, and oh no, they're in the cloud, you have to download them. It's like, okay, now I cannot do any work because I don't have the files that I expected to be on my device are actually no longer now on my device. And yeah, okay, there's some security benefits of that, because then it means a lost laptop, for instance, doesn't
Mean
cause
a
an
breach.
absolute shitstorm.
Yeah.
But it's a major
Yeah.
inconvenience for me from a work perspective when I don't have any connectivity. It
I
stops me being
noticed.
able
I
to work. So I
noticed
just have to
that.
go, okay, well, fine, I can't do anything now.
Sure. Exactly. I noticed how weird it was for me, and I'm going to be a total nerd here for a second, but what else is new? I got a PS5 game from the library.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I didn't know that you could do that. I think
Yeah.
it's the coolest thing ever. But what got me was how weird I felt putting a disc into the system, because I haven't done that
No.
since, honestly, like a year and a half, 2 years at this point. If there's something comes out, I download it, look at what happens. A couple of days later, we just had a bit of a power outage. Really quick over 2 nights ago, and I only noticed because I turned my game system on, and it told me, oh hey, you know, we had something, data might be corrupted. Like, wait a second,
Yeah.
right? Because I stopped playing with the game from the disc. That used to not be that way. You kind of rent or lease content at best,
Yeah.
but you
Yep.
pay owner prices is the thing, right? It's still $75 or some nuttiness.
This is what irritates me about PlayStation Network, for example, is that actually I've seen instances where the digital version, because the digital version comes out at MSRP, but
Yep.
the likes of Target or Amazon or whoever might decide, you know what, we're going to squeeze our margins on this, or we're going to take a bit of a loss leader or something like that, and they'll
Loss
sell it
leader,
cheaper. So
exactly.
you can actually get the
Yep.
physical version for cheaper than digital, and it makes no bloody sense. It takes up a crap ton of space on your hard drive, and yeah, it's just really irritating. And then they can just take it away whenever they want if they decide that something in the game is no longer acceptable, and it was then, based on whoever is saying we're offended by X, Y, and Z. It's like, oh well, now that's no longer acceptable, so we're just going to remove it, and it's no longer yours because it never was in the first place.
Yep.
You bought the rights to play it, not the actual game itself.
Not the code, not a copy of the code to execute on your localized hardware. It's madness.
Under the proviso that you don't copy it and share it for profit.
Sure. Right? It was complicated, and I wasn't that tech savvy at the time. Still not too much, but I wasn't doing that back in the day. Right?
No.
Worst thing I would do would be Game Genie it up for all you aficionados way back in the day. That's it. That's all I wanted to do.
Yep. Yeah.
Madness.
Anyway, moving on from that. So, CrowdStrike sued by shareholders over huge software outage. Like, I mean, I'm not surprised that this has come along, because shareholders do have a penchant for trying to, well, basically get revenge when they've lost a bunch of money, knowing that investments do carry risk. But this was I mean, I don't like this. This was an error.
No, and I looked into it a little bit. It's funny because even before you flagged it for the show, I took a peek because
Yeah,
it just jumped out at me, right? It was on my
yeah.
LinkedIn feed. I looked, I was like, wait a second. And it's just based on a statement said at an investor call a few months ago, is what the linchpin of, I guess, the argument, high level, not a lawyer, don't pretend to
Really?
be
Okay.
one, right? Where it's, oh, our software testing is validated, vetted, and your generic boilerplate, like you're not gonna. I don't think that CrowdStrike just didn't have a program. I'll say that, and this is, I can't believe it. What a difference a week makes. Now I'm standing and defending CrowdStrike here. It had a program. This just got through. If you can pull and show me evidence, I'll change my tune here. I'll flip flop again. If you can pull emails or evidence that say, hey, something to the effect of CrowdStrike saying, hey, we know this is jacked up, but we got to push it out
Push it anyway.
anyway. Then give shareholders, turn CrowdStrike into a co-op, for God's sakes, right? Like turn
Yeah.
it into like owned by the developers. Do something radical to it. But until then, unfortunate, build back better, but don't be attaching, because this, to me, this reeks of just, like what happened with SolarWinds, or with the SEC going and chasing CISOs for stuff. Listen, the Uber guy straight up lied about stuff and was obstructing.
Mhm.
Different scenario. Something
Yeah.
happens with SolarWinds and it's a giant whoops. Yes, I think. But the thing is, to me, one of these cases is going to fall eventually, and then we're going to have precedent, and it's going to tell us where to split that baby. Where it's what is a simple whoops and what is negligence. And honestly, I really never cape up for a corporation, but didn't Delta hire an absolute gunslinger to sue them as well for five
Yeah.
hundred
Well,
million dollars
they
for
want 500.
damages?
Yeah, they want 500 million off them, which I think is relatively unrealistic. But also,
Yeah,
it begs it begs the question. We talked about this on the last episode, as to the DOT going after purely Delta, really. But now I'm losing sympathy with Delta, because did this are American Airlines screaming for blood? Are United as Spirit as Frontier? No.
no,
So
no.
what is it about you? Like Delta, this sounds very much more like a you problem than a them problem. It is a you problem that's exacerbated by a them problem, but really this 500 million thing is very much the acute pain that you suffered is very much a you problem.
Yep, yep. They're trying to head fake eyeballs
Yeah, look over
off of
there.
this. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and right, our final story of the news segment, our segue story. Bleeping Computer article: Tech support scam ring leader gets 7 years in prison and a $6 million fine. Sentencing of a leader of a large tech support scam operation, which is what our feature segment is about. This individual has been sentenced to, as the headline says, 7 years, $6 million fine, and in a scam that involved deceiving victims into paying for unnecessary or non-existent technical support services, often by posing as legitimate companies. So a little bit of the detail on this one. Between March 2015 and July 2018, Vinod Ponmaran, 36 years old, ran an operation that caused pop-up windows to appear on the victim's computer screens warning of virus infections. To make the alert more credible, scammers used the logo of a renowned tech firm and provided a phone number for technical support and steps to remove the malware. This is the Toad scam variation that we were talking about earlier. No virus had infected any of the victims' computers, and the technical support phone numbers in the pop-up windows were not associated with any legitimate tech company. Rather, these representations were false and designed to trick victims into paying for the fraud ring to fix a problem that did not exist, as explained by a US Department of Justice statement. I've watched a particularly awful film recently called The Beekeeper with Jason Statham, where this exact thing happens. If you want a good story told overview of how something like this works, watch the first 45 minutes of that film. I beg of you, do not watch the rest of it. It will be a waste of your life.
How are you
Not
ragging
least
on your
because
countrymen?
Jason
How?
Statham has got this weird sort of American British mongrel accent that he really
That's
doesn't need to do, because they kind of really raise the fact that it's an odd accent that is kind of half American, half British, and
but
sort of
that's your
explain it away
boy,
with, oh,
man.
he was born in the UK. Like, why don't you just use your strange Cockney accent that you have despite being born in Derby?
But that's your boy, though. How do you like? He's
I know it
flying
is,
the
but his
flag.
accents are awful. For some reason, he does this bizarre, what the fuck is that sort of thing in The Beekeeper. I just don't understand why. Anyway, so that's the main topic of our episode today, is tech support scams. And part of the reason we've gone into tech support scams is because of our last episode, CrowdStrike. There's going to be an awful lot of these kinds of scams using the CrowdStrike incident and Windows disruption as a pretext for people to fall for fraud. So that's our show today. We are going to be looking into what tech support scams are, what methods are used by the scammers, what a typical scam actually looks like, the psychological manipulation techniques that they use, and the way that many of these, we essentially call them fraudulent windows or fake alert windows, pop up, and why the language is the way that they are. We'll look into the red flags and warning signs of them as a segue on from that, and it'll finish up with some tips on how to protect yourselves as well. Interlaced with all of that, we'll have some real life examples, things that have been documented by the FBI, the Federal Trade Commission, just to give it a little bit of colour so you don't think that we're being hyperbolic.
How do you get hyperbolic with something that I think robbed Americans of $12 billion last year? I don't know how
Well,
that's.
I mean, you don't, but it's very easy for people to sort of play down the reality of something on the basis that they don't think it's going to happen to them, isn't it? This is one of my favourite little paradigms. Like, it's the misattribution of the risk of an event based on the likelihood of it happening and the actual impact of it. People think that shark attacks are way more likely than they actually are, because they are a viscerally terrifying potential experience. I would argue people are significantly more terrified of the prospect of a shark attack than they are of being hit by a car, despite the fact that the latter is far more likely, and on the basis of that, much more likely to be the end of you. But people don't see it that way because people get hit by cars every day.
What about a shark driving a car?
I mean, the likelihood of that is so off the charts.
Fairly low. It's fairly low. I don't know. They get smarter every year. All right, and the water's getting warmer. It's driving them closer to land. They might
Now,
like.
which sharks are we talking about there? Because I feel like a basking shark driving a car erratically on the road is probably significantly less terrifying than a great white doing it.
Listen, a great white I feel would drive an open air Jeep. I don't know why. Like that's all I'm picturing, right? With
I do
like
have a
cut off
cartoon.
sleeves.
Yeah.
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 Right?
Yeah.
And it's just
Yeah. What about a hammerhead? Do you think that they've got a little bit more of an advantage in terms of their blind spot, or do you think they're just going to
I
hit the
think a
window and they turn
hammerhead
their
would
head?
drive a Cadillac. Like a big body Cadillac, right? Like I could see. Yeah. You're seeing it now too. So
This has got very weird.
it really I do what
I'm
I can,
definitely
man.
leaving this in the episode, though.
Please do,
This
because
is bizarre and
so
quite
I
surreal.
mean,
This
you
is
just leave it.
Salvador Dali levels of.
It wakes me up at night, right? Like getting mowed down in a car by an angry shark because of something I did at the beach. I don't know. That says a lot about me, probably. But tech support scams.
I was going to say, I'm
What?
glad one of us decided to cut the nonsense on that.
So tell me, Robin, what are they? Definition.
So they all work off the basis of pretexting and using people's fear and uncertainty around what's happened to my computer, and am I going to lose all of my data? What typically happens is, and these can happen a variety of ways. Perhaps you've managed to get some nasty software on your machine. You might have ended up in a part of the internet that is particularly spammy. You might have ended up in the part of the internet that is a place of low repute.
So
But
the
these
Mos
kind of things,
Eisley
well,
Cantina. of the internet.
The Mos Eisley Cantina of the internet, a wretched hive of scum and villainy. A lot of these times it'll be a pop-up warning. You know, there's various flavors of this, right? The one that irritates me most is the pop-up warnings that look like an actual system dialog box. They look like an actual Windows warning box.
Yep.
And that will pop up and it'll say, your computer is infected and you must call this number, you need to pay to get this software. The purpose of these, typically, more often than not, is financial gain for the attacker.
The money.
But in the event that they can't get that, some of these guys will settle for simple data theft that they can use in an attack further down the line. Yep. The issue, naturally, for the victim is financial loss, and there's the emotional distress that comes from it as well. Often people have been rushed into going along with these scams and frauds. They realise what's happened only when it's too late, and they feel stupid. They feel shame. They feel guilt for falling for it, and it's violated. Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's evidence actually to suggest that a lot of victims of these kinds of scams actually do feel very similar to assault victims.
Of course, and why not, right? Because I think there's very big corollaries between being victim of a scam. Obviously, there's differences. I want to jump up and down and foot stomp. There's obvious differences. But in terms of, somebody impining on your autonomy and then getting one over on you, and on top of that, potentially having a financial or data adverse effect on your life, that's terrifying. That's awful. And especially, as we'll get into down the line here on the plan, who gets targeted.
Was just about to bring that up on the basis, though, a 2023 FBI report showed that tech support scams generated the most complaints amongst the elder fraud categories, losses reaching up to $781 million. And as we know, with the current demographics and the current balance of wealth, the boomers are the ones holding all the Benjis. So they're the ones to target.
Why do you rob banks,
why go after millennials and Gen Z when we're all poor as shit?
That's what, exactly. You rob banks is where the money is, right? You target that demographic because it's folks holding the cash. And it's a perfect storm of having most of the cash. And I'm going to make a horrible generality here. You want to fight me, find me in the comment section. And they also have probably overall, as a core demographic, the least knowledge and awareness to combat these scams. So it's a perfect storm to make some cash.
Yeah. And it's a great point as to how and why these scams actually work. Another statistic that we've got in here. 2023, Federal Trade Commission reported tech support scams were among the top scams with significant losses reported, especially by older adults. So just supporting what the FBI's have been pumping out there. So the methods that we are going to look through here, cold calls from fake tech support agents. So example being, scammer makes an unsolicited phone call claiming to be from a reputable tech company like Microsoft or Apple. The caller informs the victim that the computer is infected with malware or is experiencing technical issues, and they'll lace this with technical jargon in order to sound credible, in order to bamboozle the person on the other end of the phone. And there comes this service comes at an additional cost, or we need access to your device, and what then happens is a screen sharing scenario where the victim's computer is taken over. The pop-up warnings on computers and mobile devices, so malicious websites, and actually a lot of the time it's advertising networks as well, are used to push these fake pop-up warnings on devices, tend to come with some pretty alarming verbiage. Lots of things are written in capital letters, and they will use multiple different redirects and page reloads and numerous different pop-ups that flood your screen with things that you don't want, to actually legitimize the claim that there is something wrong with your device.
And also to get around that initial, and this is a big if, Robin, if that advertiser or that service that's putting out these ads that lead you
Mhm.
down those rabbit holes, sometimes, very rarely now, too rarely in my opinion, they'll have at least some attempts at countermeasures. So if your first initial straight link from the click goes to, something.ru, right? I feel like
Yeah,
we can pile on because at the top of the show, it went into prisoner swap. So, so if it goes directly to something like that, some of these services will say, no, wait a second, we're here for our users. We don't want to do that. So not only does it enhance the trickery and the digital sleight of hand that goes
yeah,
on with these, that feeds these types of attacks on these types of demographics, but also it is a nice, neat way to bypass any sort of first or second layer defenses that the service is being utilized to proliferate these attacks might employ.
absolutely. Final one as well. We mentioned it before: phishing emails that lead to fake tech support websites. This is actually, this came up right at the very top of the show. In that, one of the ways that this happens these days is that there's no malicious links, there's no malicious attachments. Actually, in this, there is simply a phone number, and the reason being that there's an awful lot of phishing defenses that these kinds of emails that don't contain any fundamentally malicious content can bypass. All it is words, images, and a phone number, and then you are the one who continues on the
Kill
ruse
chain.
effectively
Yeah.
by engaging with it. And this goes to how these people actually commit these kinds of scams. Once, specifically with the on the phone one, once you're there, they've got you. It's much easier to coerce you and convince you and scare you when you are a captive audience on the phone, and you can be told not to discuss this with anybody else for reasons of security. So, initial contact that establishes credibility. This could be that cold call, the pop-up, the phishing email, using the kinds of language that is going to get the right sort of person flustered. And then, as I've said, we'll use the example of getting you on the phone, right? It's the easiest way to go with this. But a sense of urgency and fear is created. So really lay on thick the potential danger of this. The fact that you could have your identity stolen, your bank details stolen, which all will happen because they're the ones who are wanting to do it. The fact that you could lose all of your data, and that's actually the first 45 minutes of that dreadful Beekeeper film. It's what she's most worried about, is all of the photos and things like that of her
You're
kid's childhood
constantly
and
giving
whatnot.
that film a 1-star rating.
Because it's
Just
dreadful.
it's just poor guy, man.
Absolutely
Like, I don't
awful.
know.
But it's quite a good. They actually get the tech support scam details and the running of it
Pretty
all
good.
actually
Like pretty
pretty
well.
much right. It's
Okay.
very, very on the money. I think the only bit that's kind of slightly hammed up is the call center that they're all in. That looks like some sort of halfway house between Cyberpunk 2077 and The Wolf of Wall Street. It's very
Which I was just gonna say, this sounds like you're what you're running through is giving me images of Giovanni Ribisi in Boiler Room,
yeah.
and just really keeping somebody on the phone, pressing the urgency,
Mm-hmm.
making it needs to happen today. These are essentially high
This is sales
pressure
tactics.
sales tactics.
Yeah,
Yes, that's it.
yeah. So create this sense of urgency and fear. And in the same way, it's like, oh, do you really want to lose out on this investment? Oh, do you really want to lose all of your data? And the losing data piece is this. We'll come back to this later on in terms of one of the key mitigators for an attack like this. Oftentimes, they will then try and gain remote access to the victim's device if they're not simply getting you to just hand over some credit card details, pay $500 or whatever it is. For absolutely no service whatsoever. And once they've got that remote access software on there, something like TeamViewer or AnyDesk. TeamViewer is hilarious for me because as a season or two ago when they became Manchester United shirt sponsor, I just laughed thinking you've gone from having some of the world's biggest insurance groups to a piece of software that is used to scam people.
Straight up. Like that is it's essentially just institutionalized Trojan at this
And
point. I know they try, and many jobs ago when I was not in cyber, we used it for a couple of different reasons. It awful. Just why? Just why?
So there's a piece of advice. There is, unless you have specific need, unless you are the one who wants to have it, there is absolutely no need or reason for any of you to ever have TeamViewer on your
Period.
machine. If TeamViewer wants to come for me on this is purely opinion. So go fuck yourselves.
Listen, I'll back you. Right? If TeamViewer is rolling up on Casa de Thornton, like I like to
Yeah.
smoke because this is horrific.
There's
It's just
I'm not aware of anything TeamViewer can do that something like Microsoft Teams can't.
Unless you want it there, for a specific use, and when you're done, you nuke it off of your system and kill any trace of ever having it on there. I'm looking at you, certification bodies, because you use essentially TeamViewer, but
I knew
worse
you were going to go there.
for remote proctoring. But the second you're done with that you just annihilate it, throw holy water on your machine, and go about your day. But yes, TeamViewer, no.
Definitely. So then once they've got access to your device, they'll go in, they'll take whatever they can. They might even lock it up further so you can't do anything to stop them. And eventually there is some transfer of money, be it you doing it, or whether they actually just steal personal information and get into your accounts and drain them for everything that you're worth. Now this... we said we'd have some specific examples. This has happened. One case cited by the FBI, a Rhode Island woman received a pop-up alert on her iPad stating it was compromised in this kind of way. She was instructed to call Apple support. It was not Apple support. Then this is another key thing as well. Call only the published numbers on the actual supplier's website, be it Microsoft, be it Google, be it Apple, whoever. Only use their number. Never use a different number that anybody else has given you.
Zero.
Exactly. Instructed to call, and the same goes for banks as well. And any bank worth their salt will actually tell you to call the number on the back of the card.
Go to our website.
Go to our website.
Right? Or
exactly.
or a lot of the messaging they have, because I had to replace a couple cards I lost, was we'll never ask you for this code. Right? We'll never ask you. If somebody does, it's a fraud. It's a fraudulent avenue that you've gone down. Here's your thing to multi-factor and set up your new accounts and whatnot. But I want to take really 2 seconds to ask you, Robin. I noticed throughout the plan, and as you'll start quoting these, what's up with New England? All right, because I saw Maine, I saw Rhode Island, I saw a couple of other examples. Like, what's going on?
I thought about that. I'm wondering whether it's just a matter of that's where the rich old folk are.
Listen, right? Just hey, what phone scams for the Cape Cod? Hell yeah! You want to
absolutely, yeah. Oh. And it gets cold in the winter. You're going to be inside. You're going to be on your devices because you've got nothing else to do.
Right?
Yeah.
Want somebody to talk to.
Anyway, Rhode Island woman instructed to call Apple support. It was not Apple support. Led to AnyDesk being downloaded onto her machine and eventually lost 200 grand. Not fun. So that's how that goes. Now, the psychology of this. So how does this work? We've got here, we're exploiting fear and urgency. There's leveraging authority and trust in reputable companies. We see this an awful lot with brand impersonation scams. Sure, I've said this on a previous episode, but everybody really needs to be quite wary of anything alleging to be coming from Microsoft that leads you to a OneDrive or Office 365 login screen. It is the single most cloned login screen in the world at the moment, partly because Microsoft is the most used operating system within business, as we saw with that CrowdStrike debacle, but also because stealing login details is the key thing that most threat actors want to do these days as the initial point of entry. It's much more difficult now to break through a lot of the technology and the technological safeguards than it is simply to get 1% of the 10,000 people that you've just emailed to give you, or trick them into giving you their login details so that you can get in through the front door with the legitimate key.
And also I just want to say, what self-respecting UI UX person is going to purposely create a workflow where they're going to lead you down there if they are a legitimate representative of the business that they claim to be a representative of? It just popped up in my mind here. Why would you do that? It's gross, right? You want to have the user experience be a little bit lighter and nicer. I seem at a loss here, Robin, just because when you look at the effects that it has on people, $200K for that lady, I'm positive ruined her life. Just straight away. Absolutely. We're talking like maybe she has to go back to work. Maybe there's some inheritance she's trying to set up for the rest of her family, right? God forbid it's something that she got from a relative that died, who knows? Just awful stuff that comes as a result of this. And you're right. It preys on that fear. Oh Lord, I'm going to lose something. So you start making terrible decisions. You don't take the time to think. Each individual decision, if you took it on its face, oh, why would I do that? No, wait a second. No, but they get you to accelerate and bypass your slow analytical mind, or slower, and you start giving them the keys to the kingdom. It's disgusting.
Daniel Kahneman's System 1, System 2.
Yeah, for real.
Anyway, right. So the psychological tricks, right? So we exploit fear and urgency. We give you a bold, aggressive, alarming pop-up or email or a serious, real gravity-holding phone call with lots of technical jargon to get you to feel fear, to get you to think that you have to act now, really without thinking. Very much the don't think, just do kind of scenario. And that's obviously what they want, because they don't want you questioning what it is that these guys, these scammers, are doing. We did just touch on this. They will use the authority and credibility of other companies. They will impersonate those well-known brands because they take the familiarity and the trust that people have in them. Little thing here: if you're not aware already, generative AI is the nasty edge of the double-edged sword of generative AI, is that it has made impersonation of these companies, branding, logos, graphics, all of that sort of stuff, far easier to achieve without any specialist sort of graphic design skills or anything like that. So some of these things might get a little bit more difficult to spot. Social engineering tactics. Omar, you mentioned high-pressure sales tactics that go on with a lot of these scams, and there's different flavors of it. There's the alarming piece that really triggers the fear and urgency piece, but there's also friendly and familiar kind of language that goes on as well. I think you used to work in some manner of a sales capacity. I mean, what would you do with?
Absolutely, and these are all the tips and tricks I would absolutely use to continue the conversation. Keep them on the phone. I know that you're built for churn in a classical sales environment, but if one of these whales that you can take down is going to give you the 200K, keep them on the phone, establish that rapport, show that you're on their side. It's a collaborative sale. You're trying to help them solve a problem. You've established the problem. What have you done at the top of the call? It's urgent. It's a problem. Hey, but I'm here to help. So you automatically bypass, oh, this is a trusted advisor. Skilled salespeople can do that inside of 5 minutes, inside of 3 minutes. You add the unknown element of this is tech, and it's automatically going to bypass certain demographics. Oh, I don't know enough about this, so I'm going to listen to the trusted voice on the phone. It's just a combination, an utterly disgusting combination of social engineering, the high pressure sales tactics, and you're able to. It's what's incredible, and I used to remember. Of course, I was not doing this. I was as much of a legitimate salesperson as you can be, right? Like, I won't get into the argument there, but it's amazing the levels of personal information that somebody will hand you. Right? Sometimes I would get off a call after making a sale and go, listen, that was a cold call. And they gave me all sorts of their PII.
Yep.
Everything. Right? Of course, I'm not going to scam them, right? I want to make a sale that's going to help my bottom line. But holy moly, they didn't know me from a hole in the wall 15 minutes ago.
Yeah.
It's madness. If you're skilled at that sort of setup, and as you said with the generative AI, I think you can get that sort of skilled, or you can bone up on a target audience very quickly now. Right? I bet you if you go into ChatGPT and you put in, hey, listen, you might have to do it in a roundabout way because it won't tell you straight up how to maliciously target people. But what if you said, hey, I want to target, Rhode Island. We're beating up on Rhode Island and New England, but if I want to target XYZ,
yeah,
you
put a
done.
legitimate sales and marketing spin on that prompt in generative AI, and you'll get the results that you
Effective
are
and
after.
super effective step-by-step scripts that you can follow, which is ultimately what new salespeople get anyway.
Yep.
Right? You get a script, you get it down cold, and then you dope it up based on what starts working for you on certain calls with certain people. And you're off to the races. You're making sales.
And then layer that in with some judicious use of
Tech
social media
jargon.
platforms, free PDF guide, your phone number and your email. Now we know who likes free stuff. Now we've got their phone number.
Or investment advice. I've heard of those,
investment
right? The free investment tips. That means they have money.
Greed
to
greed
invest.
is the great leveler there.
Sure, right? But like, I have hot tips for people that need to find what to do with 500K or more, right? I've been targeted by that what I think is a legitimate. I don't have the 500K, so bad data there. But I've been targeted by that, and it's just like, oh, this looks legitimate, and I've done what you suggest here. Look it up. Oh, it is legitimate, but because we're in this business, the first thing I thought of was, holy moly, that'd be a perfect way to find out how to some whales.
Pitch them Aerotine International, a cutting edge aerospace technology company out of the Midwest.
Oh God! Listen,
and it's a garage.
yeah. Absolutely. Listen,
you
mentioned Wolf of Wall Street. You've mentioned a ton of stuff.
That's the reference.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Aerotine
You
International
can.
is what he pitches.
It's two homeboys in a garage, like you said. I was trying to remember the one from was it Wall Street Straight Up, right? Which was Gordon Gekko, right? But it's not coming to me.
That film as a cautionary tale has been taken as a blueprint by so many people.
Which is madness. But again, a blueprint by somewhat legitimate folks that'll still basically be pirates, and then actual pirates like the ones we're talking about here. That's what, yeah. So and hair product enthusiasts, right? That's a lot of hair gel in that movie. But it's those same tactics, right? It can be used both ways, and it's everywhere.
Yeah. Precisely, yeah, and they'll do the using your name as well, build some familiarity there as well. The evidence out of statistics out of Microsoft here, 2022 report found 3 out of 5 people had encountered such a tech support scam.
That's low.
With
I think
1 in 6.
Yeah.
I would, yeah. Well, there's degrees of encountering a tech support scam. Have you just seen a window and gone, okay, close that out, or have you received a call, or have you actually really
what if you didn't know?
Being drawn into it, kind of encountering it. The follow-on stat here is 1 in 6 losing money as a result of that.
And I think that's low too. Because I think drawing corollaries to your very salient point earlier in the show, there's some people I feel that aren't going to report this.
It's underreported either as a matter of shame or probably in a lot of cases, just not even realizing you've been scammed.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so the common targets of this kind of thing, we mentioned them before, it was part of that FBI statistic there. A lot of them, it's the elderly and less tech-savvy individual as a general rule, and we answer this is only general, it's not everybody, but older adults may lack some familiarity with modern technology. part of the problem is that technology does move so fast. It's hard for a lot of people to keep up, and the older that you get, it's incrementally harder to keep up with it. I think somewhat as well, some of this is compounded by the fact that in the formative years of personal computers, technology, that kind of, development of hardware and software, I don't think enough people were really told what it all is and how it all hangs together, because a lot of this technology for many people is just a complete black box. You put something in and it chucks something out. You've no idea what's happening under the hood. And I know this from personal experience with elder family members that I have. There is a preconception that exists that if something happens to my device, and they don't know this necessarily, but if something happens to my device at a software level, then the whole device is broken and I'm going to need to get a new one. Aside from your data, right, as long as that's safe, as long as you've got that, held somewhere, it's backed up, whatever, you don't need to worry about any of this. It's not. There are some really small edge cases where, yes, some software you could have what's called the firmware damaged and tinkered with, and it could actually affect the hardware of your device. But in the majority of cases, this is all software. All of this is just code that is running on the device. You can wipe that and reload it, and it'll be effectively like a brand new device. It'll look like it was out of the box, and then what you do is you load all your data back onto it, and that's it. It's nice and fresh as a daisy.
I have friends that do that as a matter of cyber hygiene.
Yeah.
Periodically.
It's just software. It is just code. You are not going to need a new device. But I think part of the problem is that, as I said, there's a lot of folks who do not understand the separation and delineation between the concept of the hardware and the software, and do not realize that in the vast majority of cases, in nearly all cases, one cannot permanently screw up the other.
Very true. And that's the basis of this argument, where, oh Lord, they're on my machine. Okay, cool.
Yeah. It's like,
if they are,
who cares?
if there's something, as long as, like you said, but the caveat is something that bears repeating. So long as their data and their vital information is backed up somewhere else. And that's a level of sophistication that, unfortunately, it's one of those cyber hygiene truisms that we knew this. And then if you have good backups, you can absolutely just factory reset a device and it'll run faster. Yeah, you can nuke it and it'll run better than it has in the past.
I did this when I went to university. I got a MacBook, standard MacBook. I think it was the last ABS plastic one, the white one that they did.
Mm-hmm.
And after about 4 years, which was kind of surprising actually, because my nice shiny metal MacBook Air is now 10 years old and it's only just starting to slow down. After about 4 years, it was kind of garbage, and my parents needed a new computer, and so I said, "All right, well, I've just bought a new Mac Air. You can have my old one." And I did a full-on factory reset, and when I booted that thing back up the first time, holy shit, was that quick! It was lightning fast. So all the hardware still worked perfectly fine, and the only thing really that had been slowing it down was, I think at one point one of my mates had convinced me to upgrade to Mavericks, and I think Mavericks was a little bit too much for the hardware, and it killed it. So once I restored back to whatever it was, Snow Leopard or something like that, it still ran. It was fresh as a daisy. It was great.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So we'll move on. I think the other thing that hits people here as well. So there's the less tech-savvy individuals. There's those who are experiencing technical issues, actually legitimately experiencing technical issues, may have put feelers out on forums. I think this is very similar to the recovery scam paradigm, where if somebody's got an inkling, if they've got an in, because you have said that you described that you're experiencing issues, they got a pretext to contact you on, and then they can use that, they can leverage that, and that's where you end up in trouble as well.
And that's where it ties into CrowdStrike now.
And that's where that ties into CrowdStrike, because if you have been if you've been looking on support pages, and this is the other thing as well, when we talk about the risks of people getting into your machines and stealing cookies, for example, the temporary internet files, they can tell where you've been. General lack of awareness about scam, or I know for certain. A lot of it comes down to naivety about two things. How weaselly and sophisticated and actually quite clever some of these scammers are in the ways that they operate and the tactics that they use, but also a general naivety about how many shit people there are in the world.
Yeah, that's the one
Right.
that I think, the cocktail party or the having coffee with older relatives, that's the reaction I get the most. Where, hey,
Oh,
have you
people
heard
wouldn't
the
do
latest
that. They
one?
would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, are you serious? Oh wow, that's terrible. Or, oh, I didn't think of that. Yeah, it's when it's your business and it's your livelihood, you're going to innovate at a rate that is going to be comparable or going to be countermeasures. So it's going to be a continuous race to figure this out and remediate and mitigate. But if these hungry legs are feeding those wolves, of course they're going to try to outpace any counteractions that you can take. But awareness, I think, is one of the biggest ones, just having that sense of taking a beat on a lot of this.
Yeah, definitely. Realize that, yes, shit people do exist, and
They're trying to get your money.
they can find you, and they will take you for everything
You
that
have.
you are worth. Okay, red flags and warning signs, right? What do you really need to look for here, Omar?
Why you calling me? I ain't call you. I say that to friends of mine, present company excluded, right? I think, if you're really close friends, unsolicited text from you is a happy thing, right? I'm not, but 99% of the time, if I look at, like, I will call you if I need something, if I want to buy something, if I have a question about something. But if you're
Yep.
hitting me up out of the blue, oh no, right? There's that old reggae song. I don't answer any unknown numbers. No, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Right? And that's to anything that's somewhat of a legitimate offer. Quick way to get me to hate you and your brand and everything you stand for is hitting me up out of the blue. I don't even like. This is how crazy I am about this, Robin. If I see advertisements that I know are from like Apple for new tech, great.
Yep.
You put me up on what's new and maybe that's intriguing. I'm not clicking that thing. I'm going to Apple's website and looking, because obviously they're going to be there if they're advertising, but just in case. Maybe this is the week
Yeah.
that somebody owned their legitimate comms and we hear about some wild breach down the road. I don't want to risk it. Right? So I'll find it myself. Thank you. But thanks for letting me know. But if you
That's
can't
fair.
contact me out of the blue, I hate you.
Yeah. So I was called out of the blue the other day by a healthcare provider saying that they needed to reschedule an appointment that I had. But firstly, we need to go through some security. I need your name, address, date of birth. So it's an unsolicited call. Say, hold on a minute. I work in the security field. You've called me and you're asking me for the information. Now, what hit me as the legitimacy of that call was that there was no resistance whatsoever from the other end. There was, okay, that's a fair enough concern. I accept that. We will send you an email instead. And he's not asked me for my email address. So it means we'll send you for an email instead. If that email indeed comes through, that means they already have my email address.
Sure.
And we'll be able to see which domain it comes from, where the actual email originates from, and assess whether that is legitimate from there. That goes to second point here is pressure to act immediately. If that call had not been legitimate, or I would have had cause to think that call was not legitimate, if I was pressed further to hand over my information when I was in a position, when I had stated I was in a position that I was not comfortable with doing so.
Would you ever be moved to talk to them about their process? Or is that something you just wouldn't even want to get into?
I regularly do say, as a matter of finishing up calls, if either their automated phone system has driven me insane, this is the disgruntled Brit in me. If their phone system has driven me insane, or if there's some other aspect of their booking or customer service process or whatever that is really irritating, or if something crops up where it's actually not particularly good security practice, I will say, please pass this on to your relevant department. In the case of the security, that's such a bad thing to do. You're going to exacerbate bad habits for a lot of people. When you do that, you should probably consider changing it. Now, whether they take that feedback on board or not, that's totally up to them. But I raised it because I thought that was the right thing to do.
Yeah, I usually, sometimes it's face to face, and folks, they'll get flustered because they'll have to ask me for some sort of verification. Right,
Mm-hmm.
I'll be at a provider's office. Right, we're gonna stay in there
Yeah.
because that's where we're working, and also it's top of mind for both of us. I'll do it as a point of, hey, listen, as a security person, I'm happy you're asking me this.
Mm-hmm.
Calm down, relax. I'm not mad, right? Because like I know that they're getting like, oh, why do you have to ask me this, and no, I'm happy that you're doing
Mm.
this. Let's go through the steps, and my wife, at this point, it's happened so many times. My wife just rolls her eyes, but it's,
Eye rolls, yeah.
yeah, right. Like, oh no, don't get him started. She's just trying to silently say, don't get him started, because he'll go through your whole, like, oh, that's a nice router, right? Sophos. But it's, yeah. I wanted to ask you like how you handle that, because it's correct, especially the piece about giving improper cues. Right, you reinforce
Yeah.
the improper behavior, and you're making it. Hey, but wait, Omar, Robin, my whatever provider has me do this, and that's terrible practice. That's
Yeah.
something we want to fight against.
And
Yep.
and I think the problem with, and this goes to scams in a broader sense, or the requests for personal information. A lot of people will give that kind of information over without really questioning the intent behind it, simply as a matter of not wanting to be a difficult person or cause a
Sure.
ruckus or just get the exchange over and done with. And yeah, okay, sometimes on the balance of, particularly if you've called them,
Yeah.
fine,
Yeah. Sure.
you initiated that contact. If they've called you, there's a lot of times where you just want to get that exchange over and done with, and particularly if it's a legitimate problem that you do not want evolving into something else. But it's a problem in when people do not question the intent behind something.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes as well, you're kind of talking with a person that is just in a position of, I'm just trying to do my job. I don't
For
have the
sure.
I
Of
don't
course.
have the understanding
Yeah.
or authority or knowledge or why we do it in this way. I'm just following my process,
Yep.
which
And
is an
I'm
issue.
being recorded,
It
so I
doesn't
don't
help.
want to. I don't want to mess it up. But like,
Yeah,
why are you breaking my chops? And that also usually stops me if from too much ire.
yeah.
Honestly. Yeah.
Anyway, so moving on. The other things that we've got: requests for remote access. There's no good reason that anybody
Nope.
should be asking you for remote access unless you have gone and contacted them. The AARP highlights that genuine tech support will not ask for remote access without prior content. Frankly, I wouldn't take remote access in any scenario unless I'd actually initiated the interaction.
Yeah, and even then, I'd be like, why? That's one of those probably workflows where I'd still ask, okay, walk me through exactly why you need it, or like what I just said, walk me through. Let me try it
Yeah,
myself.
yeah.
Yeah.
The next one, payment requests for unsolicited services. So if somebody contacts you saying, we need to do this, but it is going to cost you money. I mean, yeah, acquiescing to that request is not a good idea in the first place. If you do feel really compelled, use a credit card for it. Use somebody else's money. Use the bank's money. Don't use your own, because you'll
I
never get
thought
it back.
you were going to say use somebody else's credit card. And I was going to go, hold on, who's scamming who at this point?
It's a
Some days.
cybersecurity podcast focused on best practices and staying safe and also committing fraud against others.
Why not, right? They can't fraud you if you're frauding them first, right? There you go.
Oh god. Then this very much goes for the written communications and the pop-ups and that sort of stuff. Poor grammar and spelling is a fairly common sort of thing,
But I
especially
like how
all
you,
caps, and all caps as well.
the all caps is a big one, but I also like how you have this as number 5 on the list,
Mm-hmm.
because as you said at the top of the show here, that's less and less of a giveaway
Yep.
because of the tools available to scammers now. I want to stress that
Yep.
you can't hang your hat on that nearly as much as you used to, which really makes me sad, because that used to be the dead giveaway. Right?
yeah.
Like who wrote
Yeah.
this? Right? Yeah.
The other thing that goes to this, and it's more in the we've not got it written down, but it's more in the formatting type angle. There's lots of these deathly alarming pop-up screens that you will see that do not look like a system message, something that is being generated by your operating system. They will not match the look or feel or aesthetic of your operating system because they do not know what it is. If you're on a Mac and you get a Windows Vista or a Windows XP like aesthetic pop-up window, that's not legitimate. That's just something that has cropped up in your internet browser and is
Looking
is
to
not
escape.
associated with your system. If you shut down Safari or Chrome or whatever it is that you use completely, that window will disappear and you should never see it again, provided you don't go to that place of low repute again. So how we can combat these sorts of scams? How do we do it?
First, it's always the first and foremost. I want to, like what I said about my nuttiness with even advertisements that I get that I know 99% of the time are legitimate. I'm still verifying the source.
Who the fuck are you?
Yeah, and why why do you have my number? Right?
Yep.
Like don't call me, I'll call you. I'm a curmudgeon. Leave me alone. I will move further north. Probably not to New England now, right? You took that out of my because if I move there, I'll get scammed apparently. But
Newfoundland, you can't get scammed over the web if you don't have internet.
that's and that's I want to say the meme with the reading rainbow guy, right? Like the but immediately verify the source, and this is because the whole thing that was going through my head when you were talking about the tech support, right? Like the straight up reputable ones. I'm gonna I'm gonna break it down real quick. They're not gonna reach out to you. Good
No.
Lord, they're already overwhelmed by legitimate traffic and legitimate things. They are not going to go looking for trouble when life is already dumping enough trouble on their overwhelmed help desks as it is. Just go out and do a little bit of research and say, hey, listen, is this legitimate? Or contact your tech savvy neighbor, friend, relative, what have you.
Yep. Let's not be giving people remote access.
Good
I
God.
just say let's not give people remote access at all if we can in any way, shape, or form avoid it. Only
If you need it, you're done. Correct me if I'm wrong. The last time, legitimately, you had to give somebody remote access. Even people where we work will avoid asking us for that.
Yeah, I was. So it was a few months ago. I was having specific trouble. I'd set up a new account with one of my bank, and I had a credit card with them first, and then I'd set up a checking account, and they created different kind of customer profiles. So there was something that wasn't quite working where I couldn't auto pay my credit card and whatnot, and there was something that I needed to do, and I just could not fathom the menus because the user interface was quite poor. So I'd called their support. I was on the line with them, and I could hear them, and they were saying like, "Okay, well, can we do a bit of a screen share thing? You will get a prompt." Now, the important thing here is I did not have to download any software. It was inbuilt into the browser, into their website. That screen sharing technology would likely not have worked anywhere else but that bank's specific website. If anyone has you downloading anything for remote access, big old red flag there.
No way.
If you initiate the contact and they do something within your internet browser window, within Edge or Chrome or Safari, Firefox, whatever, that's a little bit less suspect. Another thing we got written here, use comprehensive security software. I mean, I actually, on the face of it, depending on what you're running, for instance, if you're Windows Defender's fine. I saw a question from somebody the other day on Threads that was saying, "Oh, do I really need Avast? Is Defender fine? I'm not trying to penny pinch, but I really don't want to throw more money down the tubes." And my response was 100% equivocally. If you are on a relatively small side and you're not going into places of low repute, Defender will do you fine. There's no real need. I think more so than using comprehensive security software is what we discussed earlier. Regular backups. It doesn't really matter how screwed up your device gets if your primary concern is the not losing the data that is on there. You can't lose data that is on a cold hard drive that's sitting on your desk unplugged. And you can restore from that.
Yep.
factory reset your machine and restore from that. If you don't have the smarts to do factory reset on your machine, relatives are going to hate me for this, but enlist the help of relatives. If they can't or don't want to do it, or there are no relatives who can, who are available to do it, you're probably going to your tech support shop down the road.
Yep.
But,
and still treat them, you initiated the contact, but still treat them with the same barometers and the same litmus test that
and
you would.
go to 3 different tech support shops, because some of them will try and rip you off, and tell them you're getting quotes from people.
Yep.
Tell them you're getting quotes from other guys, and you'll get more competitive bids. Anyway, skeptical of the unusual payment method. Wire transfers, do not do them. You can't. It's very difficult to reverse them. Gift cards is modern day money laundering, and
That's
cryptocurrency
beautifully
is
said.
and cryptocurrency is damn near impossible to recover as well.
And crypto is modern money laundering, right? Like the old faithful was gift cards. If you have to jump through hoops to pay, there's something wrong. Potentially, I would say 99% of the time. Any legitimate shop that's doing legitimate things is gonna have an easy way to pay them, because that's just economics.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the final thing is stay up to date with these kind of things. The likes of CBS, NBC, the news channels, they've got frequent segments on the scams that are going on and going about. Watch those little segments, look them up separately, look for other articles that relate to those said types of scams and learn about them, educate yourself, pass the information on as well. The FBI and the Federal Trade Commission always have good resources on this sort of stuff. Hell, even when we keep talking about the generative AI, go on ChatGPT and say, what are the common scams? How do I avoid them? It'll give you a bunch of answers.
Yep. And decent answers. There's enough data out there, because this is enough of a problem, where you'll get a good enough rundown of tips and tricks.
Yep. Other one that I'm going to put in here, which is a shameless self-plug, listen to us. Subscribe to our podcast on Spotify or
Smash
YouTube
the like button
or Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts.
Yes.
We're not on Apple yet, because it's a bit of a pain to do it. I don't want to sign up with my personal email address. I want to sign up with the business one. Which, incidentally, nice little segue. Follow, not us, me, on Instagram, cyber.supersimplecyber.
There you go. Really,
These are our tips for avoiding scams.
That's,
honestly, there's some good stuff. I'm not always the most consistent poster, but I do try and put out, whatever I can. And we are getting regular with this podcast. So good resource. And this is a neat little thing that I'm going to trim out for a reel and post everywhere. Let's do some case studies. This is all the New England thing. Again, it's stuff from the FBI has done this. So a couple from Maine lost $1.1 million after being targeted by a tech support scam. They received a pop-up alert on their computer that claimed it was compromised, instructing them to call a provided number. This is that awful film, The Beekeeper, all over again. How many more digs can I get in at Jason Statham?
I don't like, if it's in an effort to get him to listen and come on, like, I'm with you, but
I'm gonna at Jason Statham. By the way, The Beekeeper was
come
terrible,
on, man.
but loved you in Lock, Stock.
He's exactly right. He's been in some classic movies that I adore. Leave Jason
I really enjoyed him
Statham.
I really enjoyed him in The Italian Job. I mean, it was nowhere near as good as the original with Michael Caine, but that remake was passable.
Well, I mean, not much is. Michael Caine is an OG for a reason.
Well, this is what I mean. It's like you're competing against a high bar. So a couple received a pop-up alert on their computer claiming it was compromised. They called the number, spoke to someone who was posing as a representative from Fidelity Investments. So this sounds a lot like the Russian stuff, actually. Scammer convinced them to download remote access software, which was allegedly UltraViewer. And over time, the scammer persuaded them to wire funds from the retirement account and take out a home equity line of credit. Holy shit. Transferring all funds to Coinbase for safekeeping. Okay, so not only did he steal money from them, he also got them in debt in order to rob them. That is scum.
This is the origin story for either a villain or a hero. Right? It could go either way, where like what this would drive. All I'm doing is putting myself in those shoes. I'm retired or getting ready to retire, and then my entire nest egg for myself, my family, just gets evaporated. Like, I don't know, man. God.
Mental.
Yeah.
Next example, again from the FBI, New Hampshire woman's tragic loss. A woman from New Hampshire lost around, again, $1 million, falling victim to a tech support scam. Again, another pop-up on her computer claiming it was hacked and instructed her to call a number. This is the thing, once they take you out of band, or like what I call out of band, they want to get you on the phone, because then they can just needle away at you. Scammer posed as tech support, claimed her bank accounts were compromised and that child pornography was downloaded on her computer.
That's an added element to this.
That's a nuclear way
disgusting.
to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that really, really lays thick the fear and urgency piece, because that's a federal offence. Over the next 6 months, the scammer convinced her to buy gift cards, provide the codes, and wire her retirement savings to various accounts to protect her money. Okay, first things first. The minute that you do not have custody over your money,
not protected,
outside of any legal things that have been done where it's conservatorship or something like that, the moment you don't have custody over your money, it's not your money anymore.
Exactly. And even ask Britney Spears about conservatorships. All right, like was it really her money at that point?
I had a feeling you were going to bring that up. Yeah. The other examples we've already used, so we won't continue into
Rhode Island, Massachusetts. You really went in, man. I don't know what they did to you.
It legitimately is, yeah. But it's the whole of New England. Actually, no, we're just missing Vermont there, aren't we?
Vermont, that's it. Oh, that's all we needed was Vermont and Connecticut, right? Like, that's about it.
Yeah, okay. So, and I guess that's really where we end up with this. So we do a little recap here. Keep yourselves informed and educated on the sorts of scams. What else?
And the informed and educated piece, I think and here's me, Ostradamus here, right? I'm gonna try to predict the future. What you'll see, I think, is really mixing and matching mediums. So now necessarily it might be a text that then leads you to call a number, that then leads you to download. The ones that are most intricate are the ones that, because, and that's also another sales tactic, right? If they get you to agree to something, you almost want to confirm, hey, I've established a relationship with this rando, because that's what they are. They've reached out to you. Who the hell are they? And you don't want to then seem inconsistent with your prior choices. So it can be a snowball effect. And that's a good test up front for the scam. If I'm able to get you to go from here to this other place to this other place, I got you. Right? You're dancing to the tune that I'm setting. So recognize the red flags and be aware that even if an initial reach out might not smell horrific, if they start leading you down a daisy chain of go here, do this, go here, do this, oh, by the way, call me. There's, legitimate places want to keep it as simple for them and their own workers as possible, right? Fidelity's not going to reach out to you and then have you, send them a secret code and do this and do that and jump on this call and then go here and download that. They don't want to do that. They want it to be simple, right? They want their calls to be as short and conclusive as possible. So yes, recognize the red flags, and they could be masked in different workflows.
Yeah, absolutely. There's verify before trusting in there. Okay. I would say, I think it goes a little bit to what you were saying there as well. Thought also just popped into my head as well, and it's based on what I said about my appointment rescheduling piece. No legitimate entity is actually really going to blame you for having security concerns. So my advice there would be, if you think that you're being coerced into something, you're being induced into handing over information in a way that you're not comfortable with, document that. Document every single step. So even if it is a legitimate entity, document all the steps. Make it very, very clear that your concern is a security one. Really, really properly drag that out. This fundamentally goes to, don't make it easy for the scammer. It won't be easy if it does turn out to be legitimate, it won't be easy for the people who actually do have to do their jobs, but you have a legitimate concern. They have to allay those fears, and they will do what they can if you still have consistent concerns over legitimacy. They will always give you, or they should always try to give you ever increasingly more legitimate seeming routes, right down to, for instance, if it's a bank, going to the branch
See me,
and
exactly. Yep.
verifying things that way.
Local branch, or get on a video call. Like, even if
Yep.
if for some reason there's not a local branch in the area, it's on them to want to allay those concerns in order to keep your business.
Yep. Next one, back up your stuff. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Really, in the vast majority of cases, 99.999% of cases, the nasty thing that might or might not have ended up on your device is not going to cause you to need a new device. Make sure that your precious stuff, your photos, your sensitive data, everything like that is backed up somewhere that you know that is safe, and it's done regularly. And then reset your device back to factory settings, reload what you got. In pretty much every case, it'll be as if you never had fake virus on your device.
Yeah. And if for whatever reason that doesn't do the trick, you got bigger problems. I hate to say it.
Yep. Any payments that you do feel like you need to make, that you feel compelled to make, no wire transfers, no gift cards, no crypto, no even debit, credit only. If you absolutely feel as though you have no other choice, but even then, resist the payment demand.
Because the credit card company is going to be on the
finally,
side of getting that back if it's not legitimate, right? You'll have an advocate for it yourself. That credit card company will fight tooth and nail with you.
For sure. And finally, please just do not give people remote access. Just don't do it.
Never.
Ask a second opinion from somebody else if you feel that you need to, but only ever accept that remote access in interactions that you have initiated yourself. That legitimate you can be sure that you have contacted a legitimate entity to do.
Legitimate folks are going to want to avoid it.
Yeah. There's one final piece, actually, that we've not really touched upon, has not factored into the conversation yet, and it's what happened with this in a business setting.
Go to info security, go to your help desk. Your legitimate folks will walk you through, help you, and I promise you they will be grateful that you reach out to them. And if they don't belong in the capacity that they're serving the enterprise. We never tire. You, me, in InfoSec, I know great folks at our help desk, never tire of being told, hey, so-and-so reached out to me. Tell us. Tell them. Tell your enterprise folks. They want to hear this. They want to be told immediately so they can investigate it and, root it out with extreme prejudice if need be.
The only person you should ever go to, the only entity you should ever go to for tech support advice when you are using a work device is work's own tech support function. On that bombshell, we will leave it there today. We have really delved into quite a meaty topic. It's already quite a long episode. I'm going to have a lot of work cut out for me on the editing room floor. We anticipated not having time for Certification Corner this episode. We'll see if Omar's in the mood for that next time around.
I will. Absolutely.
You will be.
I'll be here. I'll be ready for it. I'll be geared up for it. But this was such a big topic, and there'd been so much, prep work that you did for it. And this is something we're going to revisit. We're going to come back and give you, hey, here's 2025's, top 5 scams or whatnot, right? We'll do that whole thing because it never goes away.
Never goes away. Next episode, we will be talking about deepfakes. We've done a good bit of stuff talking about the malicious uses of generative AI. It will hinge a little bit off episode 7's discussion about No Before unwitting employment of a North Korean agent. So yeah, that is next time. So tune in and join us for deepfakes. But for now, I would like to thank you all for listening. Please do hit that little subscribe button on whatever platform it is that you are watching or listening to, and we will see you again soon.
Take care.